We're going to go through Revelation 12. I'm going to try to give you an overview of the rest of the book of Revelation. And I get hung up sometimes on the details and trying to teach you everything, and it's just not possible. And so I've got chapter 12 on the slideshow. I'm going to give you references, a quick overview of it. Then I'm going to go through chapter 13 and the rest of the book, kind of just give you an overview of some things, maybe some more Bible references. But most important thing is I hope you guys have learned some things about the book of Revelation and how to study it for yourself. That's the most important thing. I can never show you everything that God has shown me in 20 years in a few weeks. But if you'll put forth the effort and read the Word of God, like David said, open thou mine eyes that I may behold wondrous things out of thy law. So hopefully you guys got a good enough foundation in these things and are able to study it and find these things for yourself. But here in chapter 12, as we saw Tuesday, the seventh angel sounds in Revelation 11:15. It's my belief that the seventh trumpet signifies the midpoint of the 70th week, and it signifies the beginning of the time of trouble and the last 42 months of the 70th week of Daniel. And Revelation 12 kind of confirms that because of this travailing woman. And it signifies the great tribulation has begun. But in Revelation 11:15, Christ takes possession of the kingdoms of this world. And we think, when we think of the kingdoms of the world, we only think earthly. But what Christ is getting ready to do here in Revelation 12 is he's getting ready to, Satan's getting ready to be cast out of heaven. Back in Luke chapter 4, when Satan comes to Christ and tempts him there in the wilderness, he tells Christ there, he takes him up into a high mountain, shows him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and tells him that he said, all this power will I give thee and the glory of them, for that is delivered unto me, and to whomsoever I will I give it. And so right now Satan is in possession of the kingdoms of this world. But when the seventh angel sounds, Christ is going to take possession of those kingdoms. And so when he comes out of heaven in Revelation 19, he has upon his head many crowns because he's taken possession of the kingdoms of the world. And that's what Revelation chapter 12 is about Christ, the man-child and the woman, and the man-child that is brought forth, which is more than just Christ, as we're going to see. But they're called up to the throne of God to rule over the nations and possession of the kingdoms of this world. And so here in Revelation 12:1-2, John says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. And so I can't give you everything here, but Isaiah 66:8, the woman here is identified as Zion. In Isaiah 66:8, actually back in verse number 6, Isaiah 66 says, before she travailed, or verse 7, before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. And so there we see that the woman, the travailing woman that brings forth the man child, is referred to in Isaiah 66 as Zion. And so this woman here that's clothed with the sun and travailing in birth and painting to be delivered is Zion. Jeremiah 30, 6 through 7. Hope you guys write these references down and go and study them. But Jeremiah 30, 6 and 7 talks and says, verse number 6, ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So we see that the travailing in birth and painting to be delivered is a reference to the time of trouble. And so the woman is Zion or Jerusalem, and the travail and the pain is about the time of trouble. And so this signifies the time of trouble that Christ prophesied, Daniel chapter 12, that this time of trouble upon Zion is come. And it's a reference to the last 42 months. As Paul said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, in 1 Thessalonians 5:3, well, beginning in verse 2, he says, yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. And so this travailing woman signifies Zion in the day of trouble, the time of trouble, the beginning of that last 42 months. Christ talked about it in Matthew chapter 24. We're going to see that this woman flees here in a moment. But in Matthew chapter 24, Christ referred to a time that they are to flee out of Jerusalem and out of Judea. Matthew 24:16, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And then, of course, Daniel chapter 12, verse number 1 says that at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. For then shall be a time of trouble, such as not since the beginning of the world, nor shall be hereafter. And at that time thy people, notice that, thy people shall be delivered. And so this, her painting to be delivered, we see what's being delivered there is Daniel's people. And so that's important to take note of who these children and who these people are that are being delivered at this time of trouble. And so just real quick to sum it up, the woman represents Mount Zion. The travail represents the time of trouble, and the deliverance, what's being delivered here, refers to the people of Daniel, the people of Israel. All right. And so in Revelation 12, 3 through 4, John says, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, this great red dragon here is identified over in verse number 9. It says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. And so this great red dragon is called the old serpent, taking you back to Genesis chapter 3. And so in Genesis, if you remember back in Genesis chapter 3, verse number 15, God said he was going to put enmity between the woman and the serpent. And so what we're reading about here in Revelation 12 is the final stage of this enmity and this conflict between the woman and this serpent. And so this conflict, this enmity and this conflict began all the way back in Genesis chapter 3. It's been playing out for 6,000 years of human history. And God said that the woman was going to bring forth a seed and a man child that was going to bruise the head of this serpent. And that's about what's taking place here in Revelation 12. Is this woman is bringing forth a child that's going to bruise the head of the serpent. And Christ is part of it, but I want you to understand that this man child is more than Christ, and we're going to prove that and see that. But just understand this enmity between this woman and guys, you can go through the Bible. If you just look up woman and study all the references, you can learn quite a bit about this. In fact, if you come to Isaiah chapter 26, look at Isaiah 26 with me real quick. Isaiah chapter 26, you can find the travailing woman and the dragon right here in Isaiah 26 and 27, beginning in verse number 16. Now, remember what I said about the travailing woman representing the time of trouble. In Isaiah 26:16, it says, Lord, in trouble have they visited thee. They poured out a prayer when thy chastening was upon them. Like as a woman with child that draweth near to the time of her delivery, is in pain, and crieth out in her pains, so have we been in thy sight, O Lord. And so that's the nation of Israel there, and Zion saying that as a woman given birth and is in pain and cries out, that's how they are in that time of trouble. And then in 27:1, it says, in that day, the Lord with his sword and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. And so there we see the travailing woman crying out to be delivered. And we see that God says in that day he's going to punish the serpent and the dragon. And he calls that dragon Leviathan. And so you can find Leviathan in Psalm 74, Isaiah 27, and you can also find him in Job 41. That means all these Bible scholars that go to take Leviathan in Job 41 and try to tell you it's a hippopotamus or a crocodile or anything else don't know what they're talking about. God said that Leviathan was the piercing serpent and the dragon that is in the sea. And that dragon and that serpent is identified in Revelation 12 as the devil and Satan. And so Job 41 about Leviathan is about Satan. And when you read that and understand that, you can learn some things about Satan in Job chapter 41. But right here we have a woman. Zion is in pain. She's in a time of trouble. And right here you have the dragon. This is the enmity between the woman and the serpent. Now the seven heads and the 10 horns. If you come back to Daniel chapter 7, Daniel chapter 7, that vision of Daniel there, the way you find who these seven heads are is if you look at Daniel 7:7. Daniel says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. So there we see the 10 horns. Well, what are these seven heads? Well, God, through these 10 horns, God is drawing you back to Daniel chapter 7. And if you study, the 10 horns belong to what Daniel calls the fourth beast. And if you go back and you read the whole vision, there were four beasts here, but there's seven heads. You have the beast, the lion, that's the first head. You have the bear, that is the second head. And then you have the leopard, and that leopard has four heads. Daniel 7:6, there's four heads there. So if you take the lion, the bear, and the leopard, that's six heads. The fourth beast right there makes up the seventh head and the 10 horns. And so what God is showing here in Revelation 12 is the dragon that controls these kingdoms that is being described here in Revelation or Daniel chapter 7. And I'd love to get into that. If you want to know who these beasts are, you have the lion represents Babylon, the bear is Persia, and the leopard is the Greek Empire with its four heads. The fourth beast has not yet come. It is an iron kingdom, and we ain't got time to get into all that, but what this represents, this red dragon, represents the power in heaven that controls the Gentile kingdoms that have persecuted Israel and scattered them among the nations. And so this enmity between this dragon and the woman becomes visible through the kingdoms of this world. I can promise you, anytime you see an anti-Semitic nation, that Satan somewhere is behind the scenes running that kingdom. And now it says that he drew a third part of the stars. That's Daniel chapter 8, verse number 10. Just write that down and go read it. It's about the little horn that arises. And it says, Daniel 8:10, it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and cast down some of the host and of the stars to the ground, and stepped upon them. And then it talks about him taking away the daily sacrifice. And so we know that is at the halfway point of the tribulation. And so right here, we're seeing what John is saying here is the enmity between the woman and this dragon at the time of the midpoint of the 70th week. And that dragon, that woman, is getting ready to bring forth a man-child. That's how we know that it's more than Christ, because Christ has already been born. He's already been called up to the throne of God. All this is taking place at the halfway point of the tribulation. She's getting ready to bring forth a man-child, and this dragon is standing there at this point. He stands before Zion, getting ready to devour her man-child as soon as it is born. All right, so she's ready to bring forth this child, and Satan is there to devour that child. And in verse number 5, it says, she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. and her child was called up unto God and to his throne. Now, right here, many people assume that this man-child is Christ. However, as I've already said, Jesus Christ has already come forth, and he was called up to God long before this time period here in the book of Revelation. And so if you come back to Isaiah 66, we're going to read it again. And we're going to notice something here. Isaiah chapter 66, verse number 7. Notice at the beginning of verse 7, it says, before she travailed. Then at the end of verse 8, it says, for as soon as Zion travailed. And so you have before she travailed and as soon as Zion travailed. And so there's two different things there. It says before she travailed, she brought forth. Before her pain came, she was delivered of a man-child. Now that's about the Lord Jesus Christ. He came forth, that he as the man-child came forth and was born before this time of trouble. I mean, Christ was born and called up to the throne of God some 2,000 years ago. And so that happened before she travailed. Then in verse number 8, it says, who hath heard such a thing? Who hath seen such things? Shall the earth be made to bring forth in one day? Or shall a nation be born at once? Now listen, for as soon as Zion travailed, she brought forth her children. And so we see that before she travailed, she brought forth the Lord Jesus Christ. And then in travail, what's being born here, this man-child, in Revelation 12 is identified in Isaiah 66 and 8 as a nation. And so she's now bringing forth a nation in this time of trouble. This nation is being born during this time of trouble. And so what Satan is trying to do is to devour that nation. That's what's being pictured here in Revelation 12, is that the same woman who brought forth the Lord Jesus Christ is now bringing forth a nation in great travail and at this time of trouble, and Satan is ready to devour that nation. He's seeking to devour that nation. And now, what I personally believe, guys, and this is just my theory. I'm not dogmatic on this. I've studied this out. I've tried to figure it out. And the best I've come up with is this man-child here in verse 5 that's called up to the throne of God at this halfway point. If you come over to Revelation chapter 14, it appears to me that the 144,000 is these children that are brought forth in the time of trouble. Because if you go over to Revelation 14, now remember this man-child is called up to the throne of God, the same place Christ was called up to. And in Revelation 14, John says, I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder, and I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung as it were a new song, watch this, before the throne, and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. And so these 144,000 are seen in heaven. Chapter 14, these 144,000 are in heaven with the Lamb, because they're singing a song before the throne. And then it says in verse number 5, in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Now, so it appears to me that the the man-child that's called up in Revelation 12, it appears to me as the 144,000 that are called up to where Christ is before the throne of God, because they're without fault before the throne of God. And these 12,000 from the 12 tribes of Israel have been birthed during this time of trouble to become to make up a nation that's going to rule over all nations with a rod of iron. Now, that rod of iron, you can read about that in Psalm chapter 2, about the Lord Jesus Christ, that God says, "Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I'll give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron." But Christ also made a promise in the 7 churches to the church at Thyatira. Remember when he told the church of Thyatira that those who commit adultery with the whore is going to be cast into great tribulation. But then he tells the rest of them that he that overcometh and keepeth my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. And so this promise was made back there in the 7 churches, that them that overcome will rule over the nations with a rod of iron. And so I believe that's what's taking place here. Like I said, I'm not dogmatic on it, guys, or it's not something that's just what I believe the scriptures teach, but I'm not completely convinced of that interpretation. But it seems to me that's what's going on here, is that these 144,000 are called up at the halfway point of the tribulation to be with Christ, and to that they make up a nation that's going to rule over the nations at the second coming. And so, and this has something to do with Satan losing his power in heaven as well. Revelation 12:6 talks about the woman fleeing into the wilderness. There's so much on this in the Bible, guys. You can go back and study the whole book of Numbers, Exodus, which is a picture and a shadow of this time to come. Psalm 70, I believe it's Psalm 78, calls the wilderness experience a parable of things to come, really. Psalm 78 says, "I will speak in a parable." And then he tells the whole story from the wilderness all the way up to the anointing of King David. And so what he's showing you there is that everything in that Old Testament, from Exodus all the way up to David being anointed, was a picture and a shadow of things to come. And so right here, this woman goes into the wilderness for 1,260 days. And at the end of that 1,260 days, the seed of David is going to return and set up his kingdom. And so all that's a picture back there in the Old Testament. But this woman flees into the wilderness here. The woman Zion that brought forth this nation flees into the wilderness. And as we've already pointed out, Matthew 24:15 through 21, and Luke 21:21 through 24, Christ told his disciples and his followers there that when they see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place, then let them which be in Judea, very specific, let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Luke 21, he tells them, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Now, if you notice there, he tells them 2 different things to look for. He tells them that when they see the abomination and when they see Jerusalem compassed with armies. And if you notice here in Revelation chapter 12, the woman flees 2 different times. She flees in Revelation 12:6, and then in Revelation 12:14, she's given 2 wings of a great eagle that she might fly into the wilderness. And so I believe that's 2 different fleeings of the woman. That I believe all this, I believe all of Revelation 12, and don't really have time to get too detailed on this, but I believe it's a 30-day period. I believe all this is going to take place in 30 days based on some stuff that I've studied out in the book of Daniel, that they're first going to see the abomination stand in the holy place, and or if they're first going to see Jerusalem compassed with armies. Some of them are going to flee at that time, and then roughly 30 days later, they're going to see the abomination stand in the holy place, and they're going to flee. The rest of them are going to flee then. And at that time, right there towards the end of this period, Satan comes down to persecute the woman, and those that are still in Judea who haven't fled yet are going to be, or they're going to have to be given a great supernatural escape by God, 2 wings of a great eagle. And we're going to see that as we come to it. But this place prepared in the wilderness, I'd love to read you the whole chapter, but Isaiah chapter 35 talks about this place that is prepared. I'll read you a few verses back here. There's 10 verses in the chapter, but he says, the wilderness, verse number 1, the wilderness and the solitary place shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice, even with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given unto it, the excellency of Carmel and Sharon. They shall see the glory of our Lord and the excellency of our God. Strengthen ye the weak hands and confirm the feeble knees. Say to them that are of a fearful heart, be strong, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance, even God with a recompense. He will come and save you. And so we see here that what we have going on in Isaiah 35 is people going out into the wilderness where there's a place prepared of God. And the message to these people is that God is going to come and recompense them. And so read that whole chapter, guys. It's a great chapter. It talks about, for in the wilderness shall waters break out, streams in the desert, the parched ground shall become a pool, the thirsty land spring of waters. And so God's going to have a place in the wilderness prepared for this woman that flees here at this time of trouble. You can also read in Ezekiel 20:33 through 38, and also Hosea chapter 2, verse 14 through 23, about God bringing this woman into the wilderness and speaking comfortably unto her, and giving her vineyards from that point, and everything else. But it's all through the Old Testament, really, guys. If you just study the word wilderness, if you do a search on the word wilderness, you'll learn a lot about this place. Revelation 12:7 through 8. At this time, after this, as this man child is called up and this woman flees, there's going to be a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels and prevailed not. Neither was their place found anymore in heaven. And so at this time, there's going to be a war fought against the dragon in the heavenly places. Some references to this would be Psalm 82. Over there in Psalm 82, it's about God passing judgment upon the gods, and these corrupt gods in the heavenly realm, Satan and his angels, and he says that they're going to die like men and fall like one of the princes. And so God is going to judge these beings in heaven. They're going to be cast down to the earth. And what's interesting is after Psalm 82, Psalm 83 talks about 10 nations that are confederate against Israel to destroy that nation. And so Satan is cast out of heaven in Revelation 12, and in Revelation 13, a beast comes out of the sea with 10 horns and 10 crowns. And they make war against the saints and overcome them. And so back there in Psalm 82 and Psalm 83, you have Psalms about this, a judgment in heaven that casts down the gods in the heavenly places. And then Psalm 83 coincides with Revelation 13 and showing the 10 nations. So the 10 nations that make war against Israel in the last days, they're actually identified in Psalm chapter 83. If you want to read it, it talks about the Ishmaelites and Assyria and Edom. And so over there, you can read about the nations that are confederate in the destruction of Israel. But this war in heaven, you can read Isaiah 34, God's message to the nations. But he says in Isaiah 34, I believe it's verse number 5, that his sword shall be bathed in heaven. So before he ever comes to fight against the nations and their armies, his sword first is bathed in heaven, meaning he makes war in heaven before he comes and fights against the armies of the world, which is going to happen in Revelation 19. Isaiah chapter 14 talks about the king of Babylon being cast down to the sides of the pit. That's Lucifer there, Isaiah 14, 12 through 14. And so those are the references for that. Psalm 82, Psalm 83, Isaiah 34, Isaiah chapter 14 is all looking forward to this time in which Christ is going to make war beginning in heaven and then in the earth, and he's going to take full possession of heaven and earth. And so at this time, at the halfway point, guys, it's at the midpoint of the tribulation that Christ actually takes possession of the kingdoms of this world by warfare in heaven. That dragon with the 7 crowns is going to be cast out of heaven. And so that's in verse number 9. The great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And so back in Daniel 12:1, remember, it talks about Michael standing up, who standeth for the children of thy people. So Michael stands for the nation of Israel. And this war is fought to deliver Israel. And Satan is going to be cast out, and he's going to be given power to continue 42 months. Now the woman here is kept safe in the wilderness. Satan comes down to try to make war against her, but she's going to be protected. But then he goes to make war against the remnant of her seed for 42 months. And so that's what this chapter is about, guys. The heavens. In fact, if you look there in Revelation 12, I don't have these verses up, but if you read there in verse number 10, when Satan's cast out, he says, I heard a voice saying in heaven, now is come salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore, watch this now, therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. And so when Satan's cast out of the heavens, there's rejoicing in heaven by the ones that dwell in heaven at this time. However, it says, woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And so right there we see that the heavens are cleansed, and them that dwell in heaven are going to rejoice. And at this time, you and I are already in heaven as well. And so the casting down of this dragon is a purifying of heaven, and rejoicing is going to take place in heaven. However, it's woe to those that still dwell upon the earth, because the devil comes down and he knows he has but a short time. That short time there is a reference to the last 42 months. And he goes, the dragon, in these last 42 months, when he's cast down to the earth, he goes with everything he has to try to destroy as many as he can. In fact, in verse number 13, it says, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman which brought forth the man-child. And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness into her place, where she is nourished for a time and a times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. And so those 2 wings of an eagle takes you back to Exodus 19:4, when God brings Israel to Mount Sinai, and he's getting ready to make the covenant with them. And all of this is going to replay itself. And so in Exodus 19:4, God says, you see what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bared you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. And so God is bringing this woman out to the wilderness to remarry her. That's in Hosea chapter 2, that when he brings her into the wilderness, he brings her there to speak comfortably unto her and to betroth her unto himself forever. And so Ezekiel 20 says that when he brings them into the wilderness, he's going to cause them to pass under the rod and bring them into the bond of the covenant. And so God is going to speak to this woman in the wilderness concerning the new covenant and the marriage of the new covenant. And he's going to bring her there on the wings of an eagle, just like he did back in the book of Exodus. And so what's interesting here, guys, is these last verses in Revelation 12 hint back to the book of Exodus, even the earth opening up and swallowing the flood that comes out of the mouth of the dragon, and or out of the mouth of the serpent. And so I believe there's a hint here. Once again, this is not something I'm dogmatic on, but it's very interesting that this hints at all this taking place at Passover. Just like when Israel fled Egypt at Passover, it's very possible that this fleeing of the woman takes place at the time of Passover. And what's interesting is she's going to be taken into the wilderness for 3.5 years, or 1,260 days. Now, Passover is on the 14th day of the first month. And if you count 1,216 days from the time of Passover, you come out to the 14th day of the 7th month, 3.5 years later, which is the day before the Feast of Tabernacles, which I believe represents the second coming of Christ. And so if Israel flees at Passover, and you count 1,260 days, you have the second coming taking place right at the time of the Feast of Tabernacles, in which Christ is going to come and set up his tabernacle among the nation of Israel and save them. And it also, the 7th month also has the Day of Atonement taking place. And so that's Revelation chapter 12. If you look there in verse number 17, I believe this is the last. Yep, that's the last slide I got, guys. But I'm going to give you some more stuff here real quick. I'm going to try to go through these other chapters. But if you look in Revelation 12:17, it says, "And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ." And so the woman that fled into the wilderness were them which were in Judea and Jerusalem and Zion. And he tries to destroy them. He tries to destroy this woman, and she's given an escape, and he can't get to her. And so now he goes to make war with the remnant of her seed. Anyone that he can find during this time, he's going to make war against them and overcome them. He's going to wear them out, as Daniel 7 says. And so in Revelation 13, we see how he makes war against this woman. Revelation 13, 1 through 10 is about the rising of this beast. Now, a big mistake people make here is they try to find this beast back in the book of Daniel. Daniel never saw this beast in Revelation 13. Remember that this stuff we're reading here was closed up and sealed. It wasn't revealed until Christ opened the book. And so back in Daniel 7, you had those four beasts: the lion, the bear, the leopard, and then that fourth beast that had 10 horns. Well, John sees a beast rise up out of the sea having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now watch. "And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion." And so what this beast is it's a combination of all the beasts of Daniel 7. And so when you go back to Daniel 7, you'll find the 7 heads. There's a head of a lion, a head of a bear, and a head of a 4 heads of a leopard. And then there's the 7th head of that 4th beast, and it has 10 horns. And so what you're reading about here in Revelation 13 is a combination of all those beasts of Daniel 7. And so when they make an image to this beast, that image is identified back in Daniel also, in Daniel 2. Nebuchadnezzar's image was of gold, silver, brass, iron, and then iron and clay with 10 toes. And so what that image represents is a combination of all those kingdoms. And so when they make this image here in Revelation 13, it's the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. And you can't have that image of Daniel chapter 2 until all these beasts become one beast. And so that's what's going on here in Revelation 13, is this beast here, this combination of all these satanic kingdoms. They're going to, this is how Satan, this beast, is going to be used by Satan to make war against the seed of the woman. And that's what's going on here in Revelation 13. The 7th head, one of the heads, verse number 3, John says, "I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death." Now, I haven't figured this out yet, but it has something to do with Revelation 17. In verse number 8, John is told, "The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition." Now that beast there that comes out of the bottomless pit, if you read in Revelation 17:11, That beast has 7 heads, but if you read verse 11, it says, and the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So one of those 7 heads is wounded to death, and that deadly wound is healed. And this beast that rises out of the bottomless pit is the 8th head, but is actually one of those 7 heads. Now, once again, I don't have that stuff figured out, or I don't understand it. But just the point that you need to get here is this dragon uses this beast to make war against the remnant of the seed of the woman. If you look there in verse number 5, Revelation 13 and 5, this beast has a mouth speaking great blasphemies, powers given unto him to continue 42 months. And so this beast is going to be given power for 42 months. He blasphemes God. He blasphemes the name of God. He blasphemes God's tabernacle, and he blasphemes them that dwell in heaven. That takes you back to Revelation 12:12. Rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. And so he's going to blaspheme those who dwell in heaven. That would include us, the church. We're going to be dwelling in heaven in that time. He's going to blaspheme us. He's going to blaspheme Christ. He's going to blaspheme God. He's going to blaspheme the 144,000. It was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. So he's going to rule the whole world. And he's going to make war against the saints of the Most High God. Daniel 7 says that he's going to wear out the saints of the Most High God. Here it says he's going to overcome them. He's going to kill as many. He's going to kill as many saints as he can get his hands on. In fact, you're told back in Revelation 12:17 who the saints are. It's those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And so any person at that time that keeps God's commandments and have the testimony of Christ in them, he's gonna find them and kill them. And that's why it said, woe to them that dwell on the earth. Verse number 8, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. The whole earth is going to worship this beast. Sad to say. Verse 11 through 18 is about the false prophet. We ain't going to get into this stuff very much. This false prophet, his whole purpose is to make the world worship this beast. If you look there in verse 13, he has power to call down fire from heaven. This takes you back to the book of Kings when Elijah had the battle with the prophets of Baal, and says, whichever God answereth by fire, let him be God. And so back there in the book of Kings, Elijah called down fire from heaven, and they says the Lord is God. The Lord is God. The prophets of Baal couldn't call down fire. And so this false prophet calling down fire from heaven is actually a great delusion, a great deception that God is going to allow to happen. And it's the whole world is going to be deceived by this. I mean, that is the very sign that God gave back there in the book of Kings, that he was God. And so when this false prophet calls down fire from heaven, it's going to make the whole world believe that the beast is God, and they're going to